The fantasy football playoffs are underway, so I hope we are making the right decisions. With that being said, let's look at what we learned from this week, starting out with the Browns and Ravens game. Deshaun Watson still does not look ready. It looks like he's going to continue being a boom or bust fantasy football quarterback for us. He had 12 fantasy points last week, which wasn't bad, but he did get saved by a 3-yard touchdown to Donovan Peoples-Jones. Without that, it would have been a complete dud of a week. He just did not look good. We cannot be starting him in our fantasy football lineups for the rest of the year. As for the Ravens side of things, Tyler Huntley did not look good either. There was not a lot of offense in this game as a whole, but the Ravens need Lamar back. If you look at the backfield for the Ravens, J.K. Dobbins again looked pretty good, over 100 yards rushing. But Justice Hill saw 24 snaps, Dobbins saw 24 as well, and Gus Edwards saw 11 snaps. So if this is going to continue, we can't be trusting any Ravens running back really, but J.K. Dobbins would be the one to trust going forward. He did look good. I hope they could trust him moving forward and give him the workhorse role because it looks like he's going to be able to handle it, but as of now, that's just not what's happening. Looking on to the Dolphins and Bills game, it looks like Raheem Mostert is a must-start fantasy player if Jeff Wilson is out. As for the receivers in this game, they all did as of expected. Nothing new here, really. As for this Lions and Jets game, Lions did not look bad. They did pick up the win, but let's look at the running back usage and what that means in fantasy football because we did see a committee last week. Jamal Williams saw 21 and Justin Jackson also saw 21. This is going to extremely hurt the upside of any of these running backs here. Swift owners, again, you probably can't start him. He's going to be a boom or bust guy. Same with Jamal Williams. It looks like his volume is being decreased a little bit as well. So that is going to be something to monitor moving forward. And if you do have other guys that you can start over them, it might be time to look forward to that. If we look at the Jets, Zach Wilson didn't necessarily do bad. He had over 300 yards. Garrett Wilson was the prime wide receiver in this offense, which is what we were hoping to see. But onto the running backs. This is the second week in a row that Michael Carter did play more snaps than Zonovan Knight. So as of right now, for the fantasy football playoffs where we need consistent players, I would probably stay away from the entire backfield. I know Zonovan Knight might have some upside, but you can't be playing him in the fantasy football playoffs as of what we see right now. If we move over to the Steelers and Panthers game, unfortunately, we saw exactly what we were expecting. If you guys watched any of the previous videos from last week, we were saying that it looks like this Panthers backfield might be a committee. Everyone is getting touches, and that is exactly what we saw. Had a total of 21 rushing yards on the entire game. Absolutely atrocious. Like I was saying last week, this Panthers offense is not going to put up points. We cannot trust them. I know they did have a couple good games earlier in the season, but this Panthers offense is not going to fire like we think it is. If they're not putting up points, these running backs are not going to do anything. We are going to have to temper our expectations moving forward. I do expect them to have a little bit of a better game in the next coming weeks, but probably not anything we can trust moving forward. As of the Steelers, though, George Pickens, man, he needs to be getting more involved. 2 catches for 53 yards, but you already know those 2 catches that he had were spectacular catches. He just looks like a great young prospect, but the Steelers offense just can't really get the ball rolling. They did put up 24 points, but man, George Pickens needs to be more involved. All of the plays on the ball that he makes are very, very good. But as for Deontay Johnson, he had his best game of the season. He caught all 10 targets for almost 100 yards and about 20 fantasy points. We were saying last week that Deontay Johnson is probably startable with Mitch Trubisky. He's very consistent when Mitch Trubisky does play, and we do want to see more of this out of Deontay moving forward. But probably the most interesting game of the week, surprisingly, was the Chiefs and Texans. Went to overtime. The Chiefs did get the win. But the story everyone is worried about right now is the Kansas City backfield. Jerick McKinnon saw 48 snaps compared to Pacheco's 27. But Pacheco did get the best in the run game. He saw 15 carries for 86 yards, and Jerick McKinnon saw 10 carries for 52. But McKinnon did have 8 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown. Obviously, to dominate the receiving game. We already knew that was going to happen, though. These running backs might be borderline startable coming in the next weeks. The Chiefs always put up a lot of points, so it's going to be a very interesting backfield moving forward. Looking at the Saints and Falcons game, if you did, again, watch some of the videos last week, we were saying that Taysom Hill might be a good startable player. It looks like that did pan out. He had 80 passing yards and a passing touchdown, as well as some other rushing yards mixed in there as well. As for Chris Olave, though, it does look like we might have to temper our expectations for him just a little bit. He's not necessarily bad, but this offense isn't that good. We were expecting a bit of a breakout in the second half of the season, which doesn't look like it's happening. He's coming a bit back down to earth, so he is still a fine player, but maybe not breaking out as soon as we thought he would. As for the Falcons, though, their backfield, Tyler Algier and Cordero Patterson did pretty much split the backfield 50-50. It looks like they are playing for the future. Cordero Patterson is 31 years old. Both running backs did have a touchdown, though, keeping their fantasy day above water, but I probably wouldn't trust any of this backfield moving forward. As for Desmond Ridder, we weren't starting him this week. I hope none of you did, but we weren't expecting a bad performance. Not a good one either, but he somehow was worse than Marcus Mariota. He averaged 3.7 yards per pass attempt, which is absolutely atrocious. Just not a good outing against a bad Saints defense as well. As for the Cowboys-Jags game, nothing new for the Cowboys. Zeke and Pollard both did get their own volume, and so did the receivers. But for the Jaguars, Zay Jones, again, having a great week. 3 touchdowns, over 100 yards. Trevor Lawrence continues to pass over 40 times a game, which provides a great game script for the receivers. Evan Ingram, again, having a pretty decent game as well. Zay Jones might be a little bit boom or bust in the coming weeks, but we'll have to see what we have in the waiver wire video coming up this week. Moving on to the Cardinals and Broncos game, it was an absolute slugfest. Hard to watch. Brett Rippon did not look that bad considering the situation he was in. However, the Broncos did let Latavius Murray eat. He was the clear workhorse in this backfield. He saw 24 carries and over 100 yards on the ground. And he also ran 14 routes. He did only catch 1 pass out of the backfield, but he was pretty involved in the pass game as well. As for the Cardinals, they are now onto their 3rd string running back, Trace McSorley. I know, the GOAT, but he's not going to do good in fantasy. This offense was barely moving. I would not trust anybody on this offense except for maybe D-Hop and James Conner. At even that, they're not going to be very consistent moving forward. DeAndre Hopkins did see 11 targets, but this entire offense is just going to be very risky. I would probably try to stay away from them moving forward. But that is going to do it for what we learned this week in fantasy football. Those of you that did make the next round of the fantasy football playoffs, congratulations, but this is the week. We got to make sure our start-sit decisions are on point, as well as our waiver wire ads. We got to be on top of that. If you want to check out the most efficient way of making start-sit decisions, go ahead and check out the Walter Picks app in the App Store. If you use code Avery inside the app, it absolutely hooks you up. You can use the start-sit tools for completely free and unlimited amount of time. Lifetime uses, I did hook y'all up. They also have a whole bunch of other things over there if you do use code Avery. But with that being said, I will see you guys in the top waiver wire ads coming out tomorrow.